What is happening, fishing friends? Welcome to another episode of Debos Fishing. I am Devin, coming to you on behalf of KastKing today, and what I have for you today, I guarantee is going to make you a better angler because it's going to allow you to make a better informed decision the next time you go out to pick out a rod. And it's going to give you the knowledge necessary to ensure you're choosing the right rod for the right application the next time you go out on the water. So, to aid in today's discussion, I have 4 of my KastKing rods tied up behind me. I've got 2 of the Royal Legends and 2 of the Assassins set up to help explain what I'm talking about. Now, they all have the same amount of line out, and they're all anchored to the same point. So why do they have different bends? Well, to understand that, we have to take a better look. And when I am picking out a new rod to purchase or pick a rod for a certain application, I break it down into 3 quadrants. The power and action of the rod, the length and composition of the rod, what it's made out of, and then all the extras on it. So to start with power and action, the power of the rod is simply referring to how much power does it take to put a flex in the rod, to bend that rod. Now, I have an extra heavy rod here, and you can see it doesn't have nearly as much flex as my medium rod. Same amount of line, same anchor point, but it takes more power to flex that rod compared to this one. When it comes to fishing, that means 3 important things. 3, right? A heavier lure is going to require a heavier power rod. If I try throwing a 2-ounce lure on this medium power rod that's only rated for 3/4 of an ounce, I'm going to break that tip on casting. Now, it also means that if I'm using a lighter line, let's say 8 or 10 pound, if I try to set a hook on 10-pound line with an extra heavy rod and I try to horse that fish, there's a very good chance I'm going to break it on a rod like that. So if I'm using a lighter line, you want to drop down to a lighter power rod that can absorb that shock. The last thing I look at is the cover that I'm fishing around. Heavier, denser cover is going to require a more powerful rod. You know as well as I do, you flip into a bunch of grass, you set the hook on a Texas rig you're fishing in there, and you pull the fish out, you're pulling out 30 pounds of grass on a half-pound bass. So if I try doing that with a medium light or a medium rod, there's a good chance that I'm going to break that rod. That's why you want to move up to something heavier, an extra heavy or heavy power rod, to control that fish and winch it out of that cover. You'll be happier you did. Now, moving into the action of the rod, what's the action mean? Well, the action is simply referring to how fast or how close to the tip of the rod that your rod's going to bend. A faster tip or a faster action is going to bend closer to the tip of the rod, whereas a slower or a more moderate action is going to bend back more toward the middle of your rod. Well, for me, there's 3 important things when I look at for the action. Number 1 is the castability. If I'm using an extra heavy, extra fast rod, I'm not going to be able to get a whole lot of bend in that, and I'm probably not going to be able to cast a lighter lure very far. Whereas if I drop down to something like a medium or a medium heavy rod that's got more parabolic bend in it, something with like a fast to a moderate fast tip, I'm going to be able to get more of a bend and load up on that and cast a lighter lure farther. Additionally, the fish fighting power is extremely important with the action of a rod. If I'm using something with trebles, I want to have something with more of a moderate action because it's going to keep more of a parabolic bend in that rod, and it's going to allow me to keep that fish pinned better than something with, say, an extra fast tip where it just bends right out here close to the tip. As soon as that fish starts to head shake and gets close to the boat, I'm not going to have that rod to dampen that shock, and there's a really good chance I'm going to lose that fish. Last is lure performance. When it comes to the action of a rod, your lure's performance will definitely perform in different ways depending on that action. So if I'm fishing a topwater and I have just a moderate rod that's real floppy, I'm not going to be able to work that topwater in real fast twitches. Whereas if I was using something like a fast tip, I'm going to be able to twitch and pop that and walk it a little bit easier. The length of a rod. Now, why does the length matter? A lot of people will tell you if you're shorter, get a shorter rod. If you're taller, get a taller rod. Simple as that. I definitely don't believe that. I think you can break it down much more specifically to help you become a better angler. So when it comes to a longer rod is going to definitely allow you to cast farther, and it's going to allow you to take up more line on a hook set. So I tend to go to a longer rod when I'm fishing something like a Texas rig or a jig. So in case that fish comes at me, I've got a better chance of getting a hook set into that fish. I also choose a longer rod for something like frogging or topwater, where I'm making real long casts and I want to cover a lot of water. Now, a short rod. Why would a short rod be good? Well, if you're a bank fisherman or a kayak fisherman, you want to get a shorter rod. You're going to be able to maneuver cover better. You're going to be able to keep it around in your kayak better. And a short rod is also going to allow you to be more accurate with your casts, pitches, and skips. So if you're somebody that really doesn't care about, pitching it out a real long way and you're just really fishing stuff within, 10 yards of you, go with a shorter rod. You're going to be able to put a more accurate pitch on that. And to me, accuracy is everything. Next is the composition of the rod. Now for me, I break it down into 3 categories: graphite rods, fiberglass rods, and composites. Now a graphite rod is going to be a lot more sensitive than the other 2. However, a graphite rod essentially is just a hollow tube. So it's going to be a lot more apt to break if you're using it incorrectly, if you're handling it improperly. They are a lot easier to break. Now, when you jump on the other end, a fiberglass rod is almost indestructible. I remember when I was younger, I had some that I could seemingly bend all the way over and touch tip to handle. They're built to last, but they're not as sensitive. You're not going to be able to feel those little ticks if you're fishing a jig. Not the way you want to go. So now a lot of days, what you'll see people fishing are composite rods, a mix of the 2. Now, not only the blank, the actual graphite or fiberglass of the rod, but the resins and the different materials they wrap on it make it that sort of composite rod, a mix of materials. And with those rods, you'll be able to get kind of a happy medium, a good sensitive rod that's also durable, not going to, break on the littlest twitch. So last are all of the extras. Now, when I look at a rod, I start from the bottom and go to the tip on extras. How long do I want my handle to be? If I'm fishing something where I'm going to be imparting a lot of action, a jerkbait, my topwaters, I tend to want a shorter handle on it. Whereas something like a frog rod or a jig rod, I like to have a longer handle that I can tuck in here and get a good hook set on it. Moving up, I look at the reel seat and how it's connected to the rod. I personally like reel seats that are open on the bottom so I can feel the blank with my fingers. I also like to have a reel seat that has a metal tightened cap. I have broke a couple of the ones that are just a little plastic screw on there. I don't like those. The keeper. I personally hate those little keepers that are just a U on there where you have to actually undo your soft plastic and hook it in there. I like the ones that are just a little clip where I can take my hook right out of there, flip it in. That's really important if you're looking to follow up on, let's say, a frogfish. I'm going to get my Cinco out. I don't want to have to take it out, rig it into the plastic, and then throw it out there. I just want to pull it off the clip and go. Your line guides. I don't like the real big line guides that are big and clunky that get in the way. Adversely, I don't like the little tiny micro line guides. I have used a couple that have been pretty good, but I've noticed that they break easier. So I like something in the middle. I hope these 4 rods gave you all a better understanding today of rod power versus action, rod length and composition, and the extras you want to look for if you're going out to purchase a new rod or just trying to pick a rod for your next day on the water. Now remember, fishing is completely subjective, so just the opinions that I have today doesn't mean it's the only opinion or the only right opinion. You all can have your own, and I would like you to leave your comments down below. If you have any questions or just comments on, I think this action's maybe a little bit suited for this, or whatever your viewpoints are, leave those below. Now, if you haven't already, subscribe to the KastKing channel for more informative videos like this. And until next time, keep fishing fun.